I never imagined a moment in my life when my son, the child I raised with my own hands, the boy whose first word was mama, would one day look at me and speak as if I were a stranger. Even now, when I think about that moment, it feels unreal, like a memory I borrowed from someone else's pain. But it was mine. Every bit of it. And it began long before the day he stopped calling me his mother. That morning was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel something is about to break. I was sitting near the window, folding his old shirts that I still kept even though he had not lived with me for years. Mothers do that. We hold on to things our children forget long ago. Maybe because a shirt is easier to keep than a fading bond. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, my son stood there, taller than I remembered, handsome, but with a heaviness in his eyes. There was something unfamiliar about him, like time had stretched the distance between us until he became blurred. "Come in," I said, smiling the way mothers do when they're trying to hold their emotions steady. He walked inside but didn't sit. He kept standing in the middle of the room, looking around as if he didn't belong there anymore. I offered him tea, the kind he liked since childhood, extra warm with a hint of sweet, but he didn't accept it. He didn't even look at it properly. That small gesture alone told me everything had changed. I just didn't know how much. He took a breath, deep and shaky, the kind people take before saying something that will hurt them as much as the person hearing it. I waited. I felt my heart preparing for a truth I had never asked for. Then it happened. He looked at me with eyes that held years of distance, years of untold emotions, years of something I never saw growing inside him. "Auntie." I came to talk. Just one word. Auntie. Not mom. Not mama. Not even my name. Auntie. My mind froze. My hands went cold. My heart didn't break in one moment. It broke slowly, like a quiet tear inside fabric that you only hear if you're listening too closely. I wanted to correct him, but my lips didn't move. I wanted to ask him why, but my voice stayed locked behind fear. He continued speaking, but after that first word, everything else felt distant, muffled, as if I had slipped underwater. I could see his mouth moving, I could sense his pain, but my heart was too busy trying to understand how my own son had rewritten my place in his life. And that was the day everything changed. I watched him from the doorway, the boy I had raised now standing taller than I remembered, his shoulders slightly hunched, eyes avoiding mine. He looked different, not just because he had grown, but because something had shifted inside him, something I could not yet name. I took a deep breath and tried to smile, hoping my calm would reach him, hoping it would remind him of the warmth of home, the comfort of familiarity. But he barely glanced at me, and for the first time, I felt the subtle distance that had quietly crept between us over the years. I remembered the mornings when he was small, running into my arms with scraped knees, tears streaming down his cheeks, the way he would bury his face in my shoulder as I whispered, it's okay, I'm here." Those memories had become a lifeline for me, a place I could return to when the present felt heavy. And yet, I realized that memories could not hold someone in place forever. Children grow, they change, and sometimes they drift without warning, leaving behind the echoes of the love you gave them. Days after that first encounter, I found myself walking slowly through the house, touching objects that once carried his presence. A toy car, a stack of picture books, a sweater folded neatly in the corner of his room. All reminders of a life we had shared, a bond one had assumed would never fade. I allowed myself to sit on his old bed, fingers brushing the sheets he had slept on as a child. I whispered quietly to myself, it's still there, he's still in there somewhere. I clung to hope, knowing that hope was sometimes the only thing that could carry a mother through uncertainty. I tried small gestures to reconnect, leaving notes on the kitchen counter, sending brief messages, baking bread just as he liked it. I didn't demand a response, I simply existed in the space he had once filled, letting him decide whether to cross the distance or not. Each day without acknowledgement was heavy, yet I refused to let bitterness take root. Anger would not rebuild what had been lost. Patience, presence, and quiet love were my only tools, and I held them tightly. The first family gathering after that day was tense. I stayed on the edges, careful not to impose, careful not to intrude. I watched him interact with others, noticing the way he laughed at jokes I did not tell, the way he shared moments that I was no longer part of. I felt both pride and sadness simultaneously. pride because he had grown into a thoughtful, capable young man, sadness because the warmth of our earlier closeness had been replaced by polite distance. But I reminded myself that love does not vanish even when words are withheld. It is patient. It waits. It endures quietly. There were evenings when I found myself alone in the living room, holding objects that reminded me of his childhood. A cup he once used, now chipped at the rim, a picture of him with his first school project, the tiny blanket he had refused to let go of for years. I whispered to these things, recounting stories he might have forgotten, stories I hoped would carry my presence back to him. Even in his absence, I tried to keep our connection alive, believing that these threads of memory might one day weave a path back to him. And so, day by day, I practiced patience. I reminded myself that a mother's love does not falter in the absence of acknowledgement, that quiet acts of care and steady presence can rebuild bridges even after years of distance. I accepted the slow, painstaking pace of healing, understanding that some wounds take time to mend, that some hearts take time to open. I learned to be present without expectation, to offer love without condition, to carry hope quietly in my heart. And in that quiet hope, I began to see the faintest glimmers of change. A soft glance, a gentle word, the smallest acknowledgement, all signs that the walls he had built could eventually fall. And I waited, with a steady heart, knowing that love that endures, patience that persists, and quiet understanding have a way of finding their way home. The journey back to the town felt heavier than the forest air. Arian walked in silence, not because he lacked words, but because nothing he could say would match the weight burning quietly inside his chest. The ember light the creature had placed within him still pulsed, slow, steady, alive. Kale followed a step behind him, his bow on his back, his eyes fixed on Arian with a mixture of awe and unease. After nearly an hour, he finally spoke. "It chose you," Kale said quietly. "A creature like that. Choosing a human. Do you understand what that means?" Arian didn't answer. His thoughts kept circling the moment when the ember wolf stepped toward him, the forest holding its breath, the creature lowering its head, the rush of ancient fire entering his heartbeat. No one in 1,000 years had even seen an ember wolf, much less touched one. And now its power pulsed inside him like a second life. By the time they reached the gates of Solin, the guards froze where they stood. One of them stared at Arian as if he were looking at a legend instead of a person. "That's him," someone muttered. "The one who walked with fire. Did he command it? Did he survive it?" Arian tried to ignore the whispers, but they followed him through the streets like shadows. When he stepped into his home, his mother's eyes widened, not from fear, but from recognition, as if she sensed something ancient breathing behind her son's skin. "Arian," she whispered, "something has changed in you." He didn't know how to explain the strange glow beneath his palms or the whispering warmth inside his ribs whenever he inhaled. That night he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the forest tugging at him, calling him, like a voice just out of hearing. And every time he opened his eyes again, faint embers glimmered across his hands before fading into normal skin. At dawn, the world shifted. A violent knock rattled the door. His mother opened it, and 3 cloaked figures entered, the elders of Solin. Their presence always felt heavy, but today it pressed like a storm. "Arian," said Elder Ithis, the oldest among them. "We felt the disturbance. The ancient fire has awakened, and it is inside you." Arian straightened. "I didn't summon it. It came to me on its own." "That," Elder Ithis replied, "is the most dangerous possibility." Before Arian could speak, the ground shuddered. A deep, rumbling growl rolled across the sky, too vast to belong to any living creature, too ancient to be anything natural. Kale crashed through the doorway. "Arian, you need to see this, the forest. It's moving." They ran outside. The distant tree-line glowed with a pulsing red light. Trees bent in unnatural waves, like something beneath them was pushing upward. The sky flickered as though fire itself was learning to breathe again. Arian felt the same pulse inside his chest, synchronizing with the forest, echoing its heartbeat. The elders exchanged grim, silent looks. "When a guardian rises," Elder Ithis murmured, "another force rises to oppose him. The balance does not shift without consequence." Inside Arian, the ember flared, sharp, urgent. Not fear. A warning. The forest was no longer just glowing. It was alive in a way the world had forgotten. As Arian and the others hurried toward the eastern ridge overlooking the treeline, the ground trembled beneath their feet. Flocks of birds tore into the sky, fleeing in frantic waves. Branches cracked in the distance like bones snapping under invisible pressure. When they reached the ridge, Kale stopped so abruptly that Arian nearly collided with him. Below them, the forest pulsed with red veins of light, threading through the trees like living cracks in the earth. Each pulse throbbed in perfect rhythm with the ember burning inside Arian's chest. "Arian," Kale whispered. "It's answering to you." Arian's breath tightened. "No. It's not answering, it's calling." Behind them, the elders arrived, robes whipping in the wind that seemed to rise only around Arian. Elder Ithis stepped beside him. "The Ember Wolf did not choose you without reason. Guardians are not born, they are awakened. Something ancient must be stirring." Arian didn't want to be special. He didn't want ancient fire humming under his skin. But when he stared into the trembling forest, he felt a truth settle in his bones. Whatever was rising, it already knew his name. Suddenly, the pulsing light stopped. The forest froze. Everything, wind, birds, even the air, held perfectly still. Then a single column of black smoke spiraled upward from the center of the woods. It rose too fast, too clean, too deliberate to be natural. The elders gasped. Kale reached for his bow. Arian felt the ember inside him twist sharply. "That," Elder Ithis said, voice trembling, "is corruption flame. It hasn't been seen since the first burning." Kale swallowed. "What does that mean?" "That something sealed centuries ago has been disturbed," Ithis replied. "And something else is awakening in response." Before they could process his words, a roar, deeper, older, and darker than the Ember Wolf, burst from the forest. It rolled through the valley like a shockwave, making the ridge vibrate under their feet. The black smoke thickened and began to take shape. A massive silhouette formed inside it, horned, armored, monstrous. Arian staggered backward. "What is that?" "A Shadowborn," Elder Ithis whispered. "A creature forged from the same ancient fire as the Ember Wolf. Only twisted, devoured by darkness." Arian's heartbeat matched the pulsing ember inside him. His palms heated until faint sparks fluttered out like fireflies. Kale stared at him. "Arian, you're glowing." Golden light crackled softly around Arian's hands, illuminating his stunned face. Elder Ithis nodded grimly. "When a Shadowborn awakens, the fire chooses a champion to face it. You don't have a choice, Arian. The bond is already formed." Arian felt a surge of heat flow through him, not burning but empowering, like the forest itself was breathing strength into his blood. "But how am I supposed to fight that?" Arian whispered, staring at the towering shape rising from the smoke. "You won't do it alone," Kale said, stepping beside him. "If you're going into that forest, so am I." The elders exchanged tense looks. "Arian," Elder Ithis said, "if you enter that forest now, your life will never be the same. Power changes a man, whether he welcomes it or fears it." Arian looked down at his hands, the faint golden glow fading, returning to skin. He didn't feel like a hero. He didn't feel like a chosen one. He felt like someone standing on the edge of a truth he couldn't walk away from. "The forest called me," Arian said quietly. "I have to answer." Far in the valley, the Shadowborn raised its head and released a second roar. This one directed at the sky, at the world, at him. Arian stepped forward. For the first time, the ember inside him answered back. The descent from the ridge into the trembling forest felt different this time. The trees no longer whispered, they warned. Each step Arian took seemed to echo, as though the earth recognized him now. Kale walked beside him, alert, bow ready, eyes scanning the shifting shadows. The deeper they went, the more the air thickened with heat. Not a comforting warmth, but something ancient, something waiting. The trunks of the trees glowed faintly with the same golden veins Arian had seen from above, but now the light dimmed whenever he passed, as if bowing to him. Kale noticed and whispered, "They respond to you like you're part of them." Arian didn't answer. He didn't have the words. The ember inside his chest pulsed steadily, guiding him forward like a heartbeat that wasn't entirely his own. A sudden crack of branches made them both spin. A fox darted out, its fur glowing faintly with ember-like sparks. It stared at them for one long second, eyes shimmering with something close to intelligence, then sprinted deeper into the forest. Arian felt an urge to follow. "Everything in this place feels alive," Kale muttered. "More than it should." Arian nodded. The Ember Wolf wasn't just a legend. This forest, it has a memory. As they walked, small glowing insects drifted like floating embers, lighting the path. The heat around them grew stronger, but it wasn't painful. More like a force awakening around Arian, recognizing the ember he carried. After a while, the forest thinned, opening into a clearing they'd never seen before. At the center stood a stone structure, half ruined, half preserved, pulsing with the same golden veins running through the trees. Arian stepped closer, feeling drawn to it. The structure was shaped like an enormous arch, ancient symbols etched into its surface. When Arian brushed his fingers along the stone, the symbols glowed softly beneath his touch. Kale caught his breath. "You've activated it." Before Arian could pull away, the arch responded. A wave of warm light rippled through it, spreading outward in a quiet hum that vibrated through the clearing. The ground trembled faintly. From behind them, a low growl echoed. Kale raised his bow instantly. "Arian, stay behind me." But Arian couldn't move. The ember inside him flared suddenly, burning brighter. The growl deepened, closer now, heavy like thunder rolling across the ground. A shadow shifted between the trees. The creature stepped out. It was not the towering beast from the valley, not the fully awakened Shadowborn. This one was smaller, leaner, more wolf-like, its body formed of twisting smoke and ember-red cracks. Its eyes burned like coals, fixed on Arian. Kale whispered, "There's more than one?" The creature padded closer, muscles rippling under the smoky surface of its body. It circled them slowly, growling, its attention never leaving Arian. Kale moved to aim, but Arian placed a hand on his arm. "Wait." Kale shook his head. "Arian, this thing is made of corruption." "No," Arian said softly. "It feels confused. Like it doesn't understand why I'm here." The creature lowered its head, pawing the ground. Smoke curled around its form. Arian stepped forward slowly, and Kale grabbed his wrist. "Are you out of your mind?" Arian met his friend's eyes. "I can feel what it feels. The ember is letting me see it." Kale hesitated, then released him reluctantly. Arian approached the creature one careful step at a time. The forest went silent, holding its breath. When he was just a few feet away, the ember inside him pulsed. The creature flinched but did not attack. Arian whispered, "You're not my enemy." The creature's crackling eyes softened just slightly, the ember lines across its body dimming. Arian reached out a trembling hand. The creature's head lowered an inch, unsure, wavering. Then the air split with a deafening roar, far deeper, far more ancient. The Shadowborn in the valley had awakened fully. The creature before Arian jerked back violently, its body spasming with a surge of darker smoke. Its form twisted, corrupted, its once hesitant eyes turning sharp and hostile. Kale shouted, "Arian, move." The creature lunged. Arian's instinct took over. The ember inside him ignited, golden fire bursting around his arm. He thrust his hand forward, not to harm but to shield. A wave of warm light exploded outward, stopping the creature mid-air and sending it skidding across the clearing. When Arian looked down, golden flame flickered around his fingers, swirling gently like living light. Kale stared at him in stunned silence. "Arian, you controlled it." Arian, breath trembling, shook his head. "I didn't control it. It just reacted to me." The creature struggled to rise but collapsed, drained. Then, like a candle blown out, it dissolved into a swirl of black smoke that drifted away into the trees. Arian stood shaking. Kale placed a hand on his shoulder. "If that was a lesser one, what does the real Shadowborn look like?" Arian didn't answer. His eyes drifted toward the direction of the valley, where the true dark shape waited. And for the first time he felt fear, not of the creature but of himself. who he was becoming, and what the ember inside him truly wanted. The forest seemed to hold its breath after the first encounter. Arian stood in the clearing, his chest rising and falling with the ember's pulse inside him. Kale remained close, eyes scanning every shadow, bow at the ready, but his usual chatter was gone. Even he felt the weight of the forest pressing on them, waiting, judging. Arian's hands still glowed faintly with golden light, though it flickered like a candle in the wind. He tried to steady his breathing, reminding himself that the ember inside him was part of him now, a new heartbeat entwined with his own. Every breath brought a warmth that was both comforting and terrifying. He realized he could feel more than just the forest. He could feel the creatures inside it, the currents of fire and shadow flowing through the trees. They moved deeper, following the invisible pull the ember seemed to guide. The Shadowborn in the valley had not moved, but Arian could feel its presence like a shadowed heartbeat, dark and hungry. Every step they took, the light around him pulsed in response, as if the forest itself were testing him. "Do you think we can fight it?" Kale asked, voice low, almost reluctant. Arian shook his head. "I don't think we fight it. Not yet. I think we have to understand it first." Kale frowned. "Understand a monster made of fire and shadow? Arian, it wants destruction." "But it's reacting," Arian said. "The ember inside me. It doesn't want to fight unless it has to. I feel it. There's intelligence. There's intention. Maybe there's a reason it's awake now." The forest thinned again, opening into a valley that stretched wide under the morning sun, the distant mountains glowing faintly in mist. Arian could see the Shadowborn clearly now, enormous and menacing, its form jagged and black with fiery cracks along its limbs. It was pacing, like a predator, but it paused each time the wind shifted toward them. It was aware. Arian stepped forward cautiously. "It's waiting for me," he whispered. Kale's hand tightened on his bow. "Or for you to make a mistake." Arian closed his eyes for a moment, letting the ember hum through him, letting the fire connect him to the land, the forest, the creatures. He could feel the Shadowborn's rhythm, the anger, the confusion, the raw, burning energy. It was not mindless. It was reacting to something he could not yet name. The ground trembled suddenly. The Shadowborn roared, a sound that carried through the valley like a storm breaking. Trees swayed violently, small rocks tumbled, and the earth seemed alive with the vibration of its power. Kale staggered, nearly losing his footing. Arian raised his hands instinctively. Golden light spiraled upward, forming a shield-like aura around them. The Shadowborn froze, its roar fading into a low rumble as if recognizing the ember's power. "It knows you," Kale breathed. "It knows it's connected to you somehow." Arian nodded, though fear twisted in his gut. "Then I need to reach it. Not with force, with understanding." He stepped forward, every movement deliberate, every breath measured. The Shadowborn's glowing eyes followed him, the cracks along its body pulsing in response. It growled again, closer this time, but it didn't attack. The ember inside him flared brighter, and for the first time, he felt a strange calm, not power, not fear, but understanding. "Listen to me," Arian whispered, more to himself than the creature. "I'm not your enemy. I won't let you destroy this place. We can coexist." The Shadowborn tilted its head, smoke curling from its jaws, emberlight flickering along its limbs. The earth shook slightly, then silence. Arian took another step, and the golden light expanded subtly, forming a faint bridge between him and the creature. Kale's eyes widened. "You're communicating with it?" Arian didn't answer. His heartbeat matched the creature's. The ember inside him hummed, feeding into the days that followed were tense but quiet. Arian and Kale remained in the forest's outskirts, observing the Ember Wolf's movements and the distant Shadowborn. Arian had learned to feel the forest's heartbeat through the ember inside him. Every tree, every rustle of leaves, every subtle glow seemed alive, communicating a silent language that only he could understand. The Shadowborn did not attack again, but it did not retreat entirely. It lingered in the distance, watching, testing, always aware. The forest itself seemed to bend to its presence, as though nature was holding its breath, waiting to see who would act first. Arian spent hours learning, practicing control over the ember. He could sense when the ember wolf stirred, when the golden light pulsed stronger, and he could feel the Shadowborn's darkness stretching out like smoke against the edge of his mind. Each day was a lesson in patience, in listening, in understanding that the fire he carried was not just power, it was responsibility. One evening, Kale broke the silence. Do you ever think about what happens if it decides to fight? If the Shadowborn attacks the town? Arian looked up at the horizon, where the valley faded into mist. I have to believe it won't. Not while I can guide it, not while I exist to connect with it. He paused. But if it does, we'll face it together. The ember pulsed strongly in his chest, like an echo of his own heartbeat. For the first time, he felt fully alive, fully aware of the bond that tied him to the forest, to the creatures within it, and to the power that had chosen him. Days passed, and the forest seemed to test him constantly. Small creatures reacted to his presence. Branches shifted as if guiding him. Even the wind carried subtle whispers of encouragement. Each night, he slept lightly, dreaming of fire and shadow dancing across valleys and mountains. Each dream left him with a deeper understanding, a stronger pulse of ember energy. Then, one morning, the shadow appeared closer than ever. It emerged from the mist, massive and imposing, but it did not roar or attack. Its eyes, burning like molten coals, locked on Arian. And for the first time, he realized that it was not just a creature. It was a reflection of the ember itself, a shadow of the power he now carried. Arian stepped forward, hands glowing faintly. I'm not your enemy, he said softly, voice steady despite the fear curling in his chest. I carry the fire. Like you. I know what it is to burn, to live inside a world that doesn't understand. But we don't have to destroy each other. The Shadowborn tilted its head, studying him. Its growl was low, almost contemplative. The forest trembled slightly, responding to the tension between the two powers. And then, slowly, the Shadowborn bowed its massive head, not in submission, but in recognition. Kale stepped forward cautiously. It listened? Arian nodded, feeling the ember pulse warm and steady. It's not about fighting. It's about understanding. The Shadowborn is the fire's other side, just as the ember wolf is its light. Both exist because of the same ancient energy. The Shadowborn slowly retreated into the mist, moving deeper into the valley, but it left behind a subtle trail of shadow that no longer felt threatening, just aware, just alive. Arian exhaled, feeling the forest settle around him. For the first time, the forest felt balanced again, as if a long-held tension had finally found resolution. Kale clapped him on the shoulder. You did it, Arian. Somehow, you did it. Arian looked down at his hands, the ember fading softly back into his skin. No. We did it. The forest, the fire. It was never just mine. We all hold a part of this world inside us. As the sun set behind the distant mountains, the valley glowed faintly with golden light and shadow. Arian felt the ember pulse once more. Not as a threat, not as a warning, but as a reminder of his connection, his responsibility, and the choice he had made to understand rather than destroy. For now, the ember wolf rested, the Shadowborn observed, and the forest itself exhaled, finally at peace. Arian knew the real journey was just beginning, but he also knew that he no longer walked alone. The forest had returned to its quiet rhythm, the ember wolf resting somewhere deep among the trees, the Shadowborn hidden in the distant mist. Arian stood at the edge of the valley, the golden ember within him glowing softly, no longer frantic, no longer demanding. It was steady, like a heartbeat that had found its place in the world. He breathed in the crisp air and realized something he hadn't understood at the beginning of this journey. Power was never about control, and courage was never about fighting alone. True strength, he had learned, came from listening, from understanding, and from choosing connection instead of fear. The fire inside him was not a weapon. It was a reminder of balance, of patience, and of the choices that defined who he was. Kale stood beside him, silent but watchful. Do you think it will come back? He asked quietly. Arian shook his head, smiling faintly. It may. Or it may not. That doesn't matter. What matters is that I know now how to meet it. Not with anger, not with force, but with understanding. The valley glowed in the fading light, the golden embers of the forest reflecting softly in Arian's eyes. The lessons of the past days, of the trials and fears he had faced, settled inside him like warm ash. He understood that the Ember Wolf had chosen him not just for power, but to teach him responsibility, patience, and compassion. And he also understood that the Shadowborn, as terrifying as it seemed, was not evil. It was only the other side of what he carried, a reflection of the same fire he now bore with care. Arian looked up at the forest canopy, the wind brushing against his face, carrying faint whispers of the creatures hidden within. He smiled quietly, feeling a calm he hadn't known before. The journey was far from over. He would face challenges, temptations, and fear. But now he had something stronger than fear or doubt, trust in himself and in the connection he shared with the forest and the life it nurtured. He thought of the Ember Wolf, of Kale, of the Shadowborn, and of the unseen creatures of the forest. He realized that life itself was like this forest, wild, unpredictable, and sometimes frightening, but full of wonder, balance, and hidden guidance. The Ember had chosen him, yes, but in return, it had given him wisdom. As the first stars began to appear in the twilight sky, Arian turned to Kale. "We go forward together," he said softly. "Not because we must, but because we choose to." Kale nodded, relief and understanding reflected in his eyes. "Together," he echoed. And in that quiet moment, the forest itself seemed to exhale, the golden light of the ember mingling with the fading shadows. Arian felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that the journey, the fire, and the shadows were all part of something greater than himself. He understood that courage was not in fighting the unknown, it was in facing it with heart, patience, and wisdom. The ember pulsed gently within him, a quiet reminder that he was never truly alone, that connection and understanding could overcome fear, and that the choices he made now would define not only his path, but the harmony of the forest itself. Arian closed his eyes for a moment, letting the warmth settle in his chest. And when he opened them, the world seemed alive, radiant, and full of possibility. The fire was inside him, but so was hope. And for the first time, he felt ready for everything that lay ahead.